Guillermo said I was allowed to do that, so. We are delighted to have our instructor joining us this evening to teach us how to safely play with fire. Would that be accurate?
Or unsafely, whichever.
Unsafely, yeah.
And
It sounds
create art.
Yes, that is the
Excellent.
most important part.
So, are we good? Are there any other?
I think so.
right.
With that, we'll turn it over to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us about what you're going to instruct us.
Good evening. My name is Guillermo De Cervantes. I'm of the Kingdom of Trimaris and the Shire of Southkeep. I am apprentice to Master Octavio of Trimaris. And tonight I'll be teaching a class in pyrography. Pyrography is thusly named intentionally. A person can do burning and the creation of art on wood, on bone, and even on leather. And so if I called it a wood burning class, it would be a misnomer. Right. Pyrography is a nice general term. There are more ancient terms, but I'm focused on other things right now. So where does it begin? It begins with inspiration. To find something that you want to work on in pyrography, you want to find something that you fall in love with. My current project, which I have behind me, I'll show you in a bit. I've been living with this project for about, I think in total about 3 to 4 years. And so when you find an image to work on, particularly with period pyrography, you need to make sure it's an image that you really love. Otherwise, you will hate it at some point. I will also be going into modern tools today. This is an intermediate class. I decided to make it a beginning to intermediate class because of some of the responses and interest. Seems we have some pyographers who may be joining us. And so that's so hands-on. You're going to be seeing me doing both hands-on with the period tools and hands-on with the modern tools, which also means that I'll be moving my setup and my situation. And so I'll warn you in advance if anybody has seizures with flashes or anything like that. I'll let you know in advance. So you can look away from the screen. But that's why one of the reasons why we have 2 cameras. My assistant, Stephen, he's my nephew. He's helping me keeping the fire warm. He's a pyro in training, and and so I thank him for keeping the fire hot. Where do you find inspiration? You can find inspiration going to the library, looking through books. You can find inspiration. I use Pinterest quite a bit. You can do Google image searches. Sometimes on the Book of Face, you'll just see an image that is just so beautiful. And when you see it, save it to your phone, save it right away. Anything that you see that makes you go, wow. As Stephen King in his book on writing, he says, you want something that pops. You want to make something that pops. And so if it makes you pop, that's an image you want to save for later use. And so when you find that image that you fall in love with, that's the beginning. So let me show you some images from history with pyrography. The first one I'm going to show you is from Peru. So this is a gourd from Peru from 300 BC.
Wow.
It is one of the earliest examples of pyrography that we have. And there are several, but this is a good example. Now, I'm going to show you a few more examples of pyrography. This harp, we have a few harps from Ireland. The Queen Mary's harp is a good example. This is a recreation of, I think it is the Queen Mary's harp in one of the museums. And you can see the detailed work. I like to point out how they painted this. Note that the painting is to complement the topography. I've made the mistake in the past of trying to paint topography, and I overdid it and I ended up painting over the topography, which defeated the purpose. But this is the accent. It's an important point. If you do want to combine paint, you want to do it on a minimalistic way so you don't detract from the craft of the burn. These are some
Beautiful.
close-up images. So you can actually see the indentation of the burn in these images. That's why I love them so much. Imagine, I'm sure they had a tool that they used to get this perfect circle. This image is probably freehand, but those images are probably a tool or an iron poker. This is my inspiration. This chest was the chest that I fell in love with, but not this part of the chest, the inside cover. This is a 13th century Italian wedding chest. It would be given to a bride at her wedding, filled with garments of sleeping clothes and bedding and material. But this image here, this is the image that inspired me 4 years ago. And I've endeavored to recreate it in my ArtSci project, which I'm submitting next weekend. And we'll talk a bit more about that. What this is 5 Italian knights camping outside of Jerusalem during the Crusades. Note the detail work of their doublets. It's very moving. This was my first year working with the image. I wanted to practice with the image with modern tools. I did this with modern tools. And this was a award for a tournament here in our Shire, the 3 Ships tournament, and our heavy weapons competition. The Jarl Ari was victorious, and this was a table that he got to take home with him as his trophy for that tournament. Notice the cross cuts. It's a very interesting technique that they used. This is my first effort of pyrography with the ArtSci. This was a headboard of the French tapestry. There are 6 very famous French tapestries, and this was my first effort. And this is the second effort with period tools with the same tapestry. I made a mistake with this one because I painted it, and this is a lesson learned. And so you can see that you have no clue that this was originally a pyrography. I sometimes it's not good to listen to others, and I followed the advice of somebody, and it just didn't work out because it looks like a painting. It doesn't look like pyrography at all. So we learn from our mistakes, and I'm sharing with you my mistakes so that you can learn from them. But I am proud of it and made a wonderful gift for my mother. She loves it. This was done with tempera paint, by the way. This is a Spanish example of pyrography that combines both pyrography and ink work. You see a close-up, you could see the burn pyrography, but you can also see that they've done some ink filling in the designs. This is a Spanish chest, I think from the 15th century. We should be getting to the spoons very soon. There we go. So this is our process. This is a spoon made out of bamboo. I picked it up at our local Publix. They usually comes in sets of 3 or 6. I competed in the recent crown list, and I gave spoons like this to the consorts as a gift. First step in the process of pyrography is to find a object that you want to work on that is very clean of knots, very few bruises. You want a very clear surface. That's not to say you can't use the knot work in your artwork. You know, if you have a knot in your wood, maybe you can use it creatively as an eye, but generally your goal is to find a nice clean surface, free of any blemish. And then the next step is to sand it nice and clean, and then draw your image that you want to work with. So this is a drawing of the rose. And I like to use a H5 pencil. Gives a nice dark image to work from. Once you draw your image onto your object, the next step is to do the line burn. This is a line burn. Use a special tool just for that. It's a very straight edge iron poker. This I did with modern tools. I'll be showing you both in due course, but the tip is a very straight edge, and that's how you can pull off the lines and the curves. And then the next step is to shade it. So here you can see the shading of the rose, which can be the end. The next step after you shade your image might be to cover it with polyurethane or a varnish to protect it. Being that these are cooking implements, these spoons, I fully hoped that people would use them in their kitchens. I did not apply any kind of protective coat, though they do exist. You just need to make sure that you're using something that's not toxic. You can order protective coating that is safe to use in a kitchen. I just didn't, in this case, I didn't feel the need to. I thought it was good as is, but it is an option. But usually when I'm doing my other work that doesn't have anything to do with the kitchen, I would use a polyurethane or a varnish as a finishing touch to protect it. So let me show you a few things. The tools. We talked about the straight edge tool. This is an iron poker. It's about a foot and a few inches long. This sits in the fire. And if you can see, the edge is very flat. And this is how you get a straight line. Now, if you want to go on like curves, you might use the tip as you're pressing onto your surface. You can do there, that's better. You can do a flat drag, or you can do just the tip. The ideal way to hold it, sorry, give me a second, would be here, because you're able to push down and you're able to pull down as well. You might go straight down, or you might go at an angle depending on what you're doing. The thing about these pokers is when you take it out of the fire, they're only hot for 7 seconds. And that's why if you look at the other image, you see there are 3 pokers in there. I have 3 pokers of every kind I have. I got them from Gulf War. It is the first tool that I needed. I knew that while I was working with one, I wanted the other 2 to be heating up and staying hot. So time is your biggest challenge with pyrography, because you only have 7 seconds to get the work done with each poker, and you can make the most out of that 7 seconds. So this is a straight edge. That's what you use with lines. But for shading, you have this diamond shaped poker. Same size. It's perfect size to sit in my heating source, which is a cauldron. You can see it over there. You can see them sticking out. It's the perfect size. Size matters. It matters in this case. You have to, I made the mistake of ordering a very small, the last Gulf War, I wanted to get more fine-tuned, smaller iron pokers, but they were too small. They sat into the fire, and actually I have to get a blacksmith to extend their length. They're not long enough for me to use practically. So this is the ideal size that you want to use. So that's in it, but far enough out that the handles don't burn. You see, they do get a little burn. But this is for shading. This tip is excellent because it can sit flat for a maximum burn if you're looking for deep, deep dark. But when you're doing shading, usually you're deciding on, to do shading, you have to decide on where the light source is. So if I'm using this screen and I want to shade the screen, you see the light source is here behind my head. So everything over here is just a little bit darker. You can actually see it, right? The light is bright white, but coming out from that, it's getting darker, darker, darker. And over here, you can see the back of my room, it's getting darker. And so that's the thinking you have to think when you're doing shading. You have to decide where your light source is and then shade everything on the other side darker. That's how you do it. And how you would implement it, you would decide if I want, let's say this part of the screen, the corner really black dark, then I would use a flat surface. And then I would gradiate from there. So once I start to burn, so it's going to be a fading shade, then I would use the side. So I'm not flat, I'm using the side. You know, and I might move it in such a way so it's not the flat surface, you're getting the side, and then you start seeing a faded burn, which gives you that shaded effect. So the diamond shaped poker is for shading. I've got a nice pointy one for certain effects. I've got a not so pointy one. I think I have one that's a square. You can have a mini design. I could probably have one made that's a perfect circle like we saw in the heart. And you might need a file before you start working just to get them nice and perfect for you. So those are the tools for the pyrography. And we talked about pencil and a good art eraser. These things are wonderful. You can see how much I've chewed into this with my current project. But these are basic tools. Now, when we're talking about the modern tools, this is an example. The cool thing about the modern tools is you screw the tips on. And so the tips are interchangeable. You're using, we're going to go in a few minutes to see the modern tool zone where you can actually see it, but it's kind of, think of like a welding pen, and you know, and you can change the tips. So I've got the sharp pointy tip. I got this one for shading. Got a nice circular tip. So lots of choices here for tips. So what do you use for a heating source? I use a variety. So we got oak wood. We have some charcoaled wood, and standard charcoal that you would use for a barbecue pit. And you want to use the wood source because it burns slower and it lasts longer. I usually put 1 or 2, not so big because it'll fill out your heating source, but usually 1 or 2 of these and a mix of the charcoal wood and a few of these. When you're making your fire, that is a challenge. Because when you're starting, it takes about an hour to get a fire good and ready. Because when you're first starting it, you're just struggling to get it to take. But it isn't really ready until the fire takes on its own life. When you're able to see the fire go out and you hit it with your bellows, which we'll talk about in a moment, and it comes back on its own, that's when you know the fire is ready to really work. It takes about 45 minutes or so to do that, to get to that place. And the goal is for the wood to look like, for the fire to look like this, where it's orange, there we go, where it's orange and it's giving off maximum heat. Again, the goal is not flame, the goal is heat. And so when it looks like this, notice that there's a hole in the middle of the coals. I deliberately make that hole in the middle so that the air will blast all the way to the bottom to get maximum heat. So how do I do that? The bellows, my very first art side project. My homemade bellows. The thing served me for about three and a half years until I had to admit defeat. But this bellows was created from, again, sourced Publix. I don't know if anybody knows what a tostones press is, but it's what the Latin culture uses to press bananas and fry them. And I got 2 of them with carpet nails, and the leather was from a couch. I butchered a couch, and inside there is a brass tube that's surrounded by leather, and this thing still gives a little air, but this is much better than blowing on it. And I had to admit defeat when I realized I was working too hard, and I ordered on Amazon my new bellows, and it came the very next day. I was very happy. And that's what you use to keep the fire going. It's a routine between feeding the fire charcoal to keep it going, feeding the fire air, and doing the craft. It's like a dance. Feeding the fire charcoal, feeding the fire air with the bellows, and doing the art. 7 seconds. And it continues as you're working with the three tools, 3 iron pokers. A word to the wise. This is not a craft for people that have chronic pain. You're bending, you're leaning, you're working your joints. I find it much better to work standing up. It is a dirty hobby, and all the good ways, but you're going to get grimy. Fire pops, so you want to wear closed-toed shoes, clothes you really don't give a damn about, because it's by the end of I in one day I could put in easily 4 to 6 hours of work. You're covered with soot from the fire and the ash and the smoke. So just be aware if you have respiratory problems. Maybe this is not the best choice, or maybe you might want to use a respirator or a mask. There are safety measures that I would advise, which you're not seeing me use. A metal pan, for example, underneath, which I don't currently have. Some people might want to use heat-resistant gloves. I used them in the beginning. I don't feel the need to use them now. But these are tools that you can use. Have water on hand, that I do have. Just in case you need to put the fire out quickly, which has never happened with me. So those safety measures are important. So I think it's time to go outside. I'm going to be turning to the other screen. So you can ignore this screen. I'm going over there. Okay, this is my project that I use for teaching for the period tools. Let's see here. These tools have been in here a good long time. almost an hour and a half. We need to add some. Okay, looking at my left. Got to feed the fire the coals. Now, I have an extra tool on hand just to move the coals around. Can you see it? You can see. Remember, I want the eye in the middle. So I'm moving the coals around to the outside. So this is a cauldron. This cauldron I picked up in a Latino botanica. They thought it was very strange. A gringo was going into their botanica. But I was looking for just what I found. This was a perfect source for me. So you need to find a place to keep this is your source of your work, where your fire is. Now, when I'm doing the bellows, I have two techniques. One is the overhead technique. I try to stay about a foot away. And I'm moving in a clockwise fashion around, going from straight down into the fire. If I had more space, at the moment I don't, I would do it, I would move around also 360 with the angles. So the fire is for period pyrography. You can't do anything unless you got the good fire. Now, so this is, you notice that I've been on a thing with roses. I intend for this to be the king, a gift for a king and queen one day. When I teach this class live, I let people do hands-on, trying to do pyrography hands-on. So this hasn't just been done by me, it's been done by my students as well. And I have 3 pokers, but I've cheated because I want to show you a little bit of shading. I have an extra poker on hand just to move the coals around, just so that I can make sure or I might need to move the cauldron around. So I have this extra poker available to make adjustments. So what I have in the fire, I have 2 straight edge and I have 1 diamond shape. I have no idea which one it is. But what's going to be cool about this is you're going to see how quickly, okay. These have been in the flame for quite a long time. And so they're going to come out really hot. What you want to think about with the 7 seconds, and these might actually give us a good 10 seconds, is that when you first pull it out, because it's so blazing hot, you're going to have a really deep burn, like you might see here. Let me see if I can zoom in for you guys. Nope, doesn't let me adjust it. I tried. I can do this. Here we go. So this spot here you can see is a very deep burn. And that comes from a poker that's fresh out of the fire. But as the seconds pass, the heat dissipates and then you get a more finer line. You want to plan for that because there are times where you want a deep burn. Like here, I want a deep burn for the stem, but it's not deep enough. I need to go over it again. I might do that now. But there are times, let's say, if you want a very fine line, and if that's the case, you want to wait until maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th second. As you know, you can feel that it's cooling. You might come back to that fine line. So I'm going to do that with this. I'm going to keep this very tip. I'm going to come to that at the end of my burn to show you how you can use that 7 seconds in a maximum way. Use the deep burn when you first pull it out. I'm going to come here and go over this line again. And then as it cools, you go to another part where you want a fine line And you can do that here. So let's see what we get. Yes. So this line was already done, but I could see that it's not dark enough for the stem. So I'm making it darker. Oops, already thinning. So come over here. Okay. All right. So put that back in. So you see, when we pull it out, we had a very deep, deep line. But because it was cooling, I switched up here. You can see how thin that line is. There are times, let's say, if you want a wisp of hair, then you might want a very thin line. So these are choices you can make to get maximum effect. A few more points about the iron pokers. Let me show you that picture. It's easier just to do it this way. This is not a great example, but with the 3 iron pokers, I try to get them in so that they're underneath each other. You cross it. Like you could see this poker is crossing over that poker. Ideally, I would do the same with this poker would be coming in this angle. So you can see it's almost like a triangle shape. Why is that important? Because you don't want the pokers to fall out. And so they wedge together if you do it in this way so that they stay inside the cauldron for maximum effect. So we fed it charcoal, but we got to get it hot again. So the bellows. When you're doing this, it starts to feel like a very meditative trance because you're doing the bellows, you're giving the fire the heat, you're adding charcoal, and then you're doing the work. And it becomes very, very relaxing. And in no time, you might find that 6 hours go by and you didn't even know that. So before you start the work, it's important that you decide on what you're going to do. Yep, decide on what your goal is. So you set limits on yourself. You're going to do this much. And I do that usually by drawing the image out. And I'm only going to draw what I'm going to do that day. So you don't overdo yourself because it's very easy to get lost in the trance of the work. Before you work, eat a good meal and have yourself well hydrated. Have water on hand to hydrate yourself as you're working. And if somebody that is in your life that loves you very much, maybe they'll bring you a sandwich because you will forget to eat because you're so caught up in the work, especially when the fire is so beautiful like this fire is. You can get a lot of work done and time will pass and you won't even realize it. I like to do the bellows until I feel the heat on my face. And the charcoals are bright, beautiful orange. I actually wrote a poem about that. Okay.
There was a question on where you obtain the cauldron and the bellows.
Well, the bellows I picked up from Amazon. I was very happy. It was only like, I think $25, I think, or $19. It's a magnificent, beautiful piece, much prettier than mine. I want to point out the science of the bellows is fascinating because of this hole. I like this for teaching purposes because inside this hole, there is a leather, there's a piece of leather. So that when I open the bellows, the air goes in this hole. And when I close the bellows, the hole catches so that the air comes out the tip. Here, see? Feel that? So Amazon was my source for the bellows. Go for blacksmiths are my source for the iron pokers. The cauldron, I got it in a Spanish Botanica. You don't have to use a cauldron. You can probably use a hibachi, anything that would hold charcoal. It should be something that's portable. That's why I love this cauldron. It's very small and portable and contained. But it doesn't. You don't have to use a cauldron. You can find whatever you want, whatever would work for you. But okay, I'm gonna do the shading later. That's more light work. I'm not happy with this one yet. There is something. Ooh, that's nice and dark. Oh wow, you can see that really good. This is a good one. I want the stem to be really dark. Oh, the switch. Now, pressure. Let me stop. I'm using my leg to support because I'm dragging. This is good. Now it's flat. You see the iron poker is very flat. Oh, I've almost lost, but I'm gonna continue. Almost lost all the heat, but it's just nice. Okay, so this is how you can see how this is really dark. That poker was really good and good and hot, and gave a really strong burn, and that was really cool. It almost with some wood, it burns like it can burn. It feels like you're burning like butter when you first pull it out, and so you have to be careful and decisive where you use that. But you can see here the lighter. I did this line and then I did this line. You can actually see the difference. That's even darker than that, but it gives dimension. Okay, so a few points of reference. There are things that I call abstract tools. Abstract tools. Oh, I'm going to keep the fire some more circle. I usually do 3 of these as I feed it. These are the briquettes, the charcoal briquettes that I just put in. Abstract tools are things that you cannot hold, things you can't grasp, things you maybe can't even see, but they're tools to the work nonetheless. What am I talking about? Light, a light source. The first time I did this art, I was doing it outside by a pool, and I was limited by the sunlight. The sun went down, and I had to get a light source to work with. And so having enough light is important. Ventilation. I am on a back porch in my apartment. Shelter. The beauty of this back porch is it gives me the ventilation that I need, but at the same time, I have a roof over my head. So I can actually keep working in the rain. And pressure, the amount of pressure you use in your craft. When I first pull out the poker and it's blazing hot, I do not need to use a great deal of pressure unless I choose to. Here I wanted the deepest burn I could. And so because of that, I applied a great deal of pressure to this burn, but it's not necessary because it's so hot. It's going to burn dark anyways. And when I'm doing the lighter burn, I'm applying far less pressure if I really want to have a wispy-like line, but maybe that's not so important to me. Maybe I just want to get as much burn as I can. And so I might have to apply more pressure because the heat is fading. So how do I do that? Let's go back to the straight edge. I have to decide on what I'm going to do before I do it. Let's see. I think the leaf is calling. So this is a leaf, and it's a pencil drawing of a leaf. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you will in a moment. So I am not going to apply a great deal of pressure on this leaf because I want it to be light. Sometimes I'll have a piece of oak on hand because I want to dissipate the heat. The initial heat when I pull it out might be maybe too red hot. So I'm going to let it dissipate into the wood a little bit. So then it's not too much. I'm using the tip now. Just dragging it along the line. Note my hand, how my hand is holding. So I'm applying pressure from both the top and the bottom. And a curve means leaning the body. Okay. There. So you can see the lines start to fading in strength as the iron poker is cooling. But I'm okay with that because the leaf, I want it to be light. I want it to be a light line. This is not an exacting science. You can't have perfection. Mistakes will happen. As Julia Childs used to say, if you break an egg, don't cry over it, just clean it up. And this is an art form that is a bit chaotic. Sometimes your iron poker will slip and you might have a scratch, or you might burn something you don't intend to. It could be maybe a poor judgment. Big mistakes can happen, and when they do, you have to be able to roll with it. Don't let it destroy you. And you might find that the mistakes might lead to something better than you originally planned. So I think it's time that we think about shading. I want you to see me do that. So if this is my light source, I'm going from the top. That means my darker colors will be, darkness will be on this side and lighter on that side. So I'm going to do some shading on this. So this, again, this is a diamond shaped poker.
Now,
yes.
Would you ever sandpaper out your mistakes, or would you just go with it?
I find that sandpaper is better used, and a very light grained sandpaper is better used for cleanup. Shading gives you an opportunity to correct mistakes. I think I have an example of that on here. Yes, okay. This spot right here, get as close. Can you see how this line goes over?
Yes.
Okay, that's a mistake. My goal is to get it right next to it. But with shading, I'm able to basically white it out with a shade. So let's do that. Here we go. So I'm applying the side of. I'm just dragging it along that edge. I think I can apply a little bit more. This is really hot. This has been in there an hour and a half. I'm letting it, doing it a little bit flatter. Okay. So I didn't white it out, I blacked it out. And so that's how you can correct your mistakes. Okay.
So Bob Ross said, what, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents.
Well, it's amazing because sometimes those happy accidents can lead to something that you didn't, because you didn't plan for it. It could lead to something so much better than what you originally planned for. And that is something that is reality. Sometimes a little chaos can go a long way. I wish you could see the inside of this fire. It's so pretty. Okay, I'm going to go for it.
We used to say, it's not a mistake, it's an improvisation.
There you go. Innovation. Innovation. Okay, I'm going to let that poker get hot again because I want to show you a deep burn. So I'm going to go back to our leaf. And this part of the leaf is very curvy. So you're going to see my body distort and twist in some very strange ways. Right. Problem is sometimes I forget which one of these I used last. So let's see what happens with this one. Straight tip. Oh, wait a minute. This page, that's not so bad. I'm just using the tip so that I can pull off the curves. Oh, little slide, but that's okay. Again, I want to point out how I'm holding this. I'm putting pressure, pulling down, and I'm putting pressure, pushing down with both hands. Both hands are applying pressure. How much pressure you use depends on what you're going for. That one needs a little bit more, so I'm going to switch to the other. So needless to say, period pyrography is a very slow process, but it's very relaxing. You can very easily get lost in the work. Yeah, that one's real hot. I'm just finishing this. It did a little slide. So there's another abstract tool that I haven't talked about, and that is time. Time and critical thinking. What I mean by time is when you're working, you get so involved with what you're doing that you may not be able to really see it objectively. And sometimes you might need to take a time out from the work so that you're able to come back to it with a clear mind. So you with a clear mind, and that way you can see the mistakes. You can see what you have to correct. And so time itself is a kind of tool to clear the board and you might have to take a few days. You may have even take a few weeks away from it so that when you come back at it, you can be much more critical and see the details much better with a clear head. And so time is a tool. Critical thinking is a tool. Artists must always have a balance between creativity and logic. The creativity is obvious. You're creating art, but you also have to be very logical and critical about what you do so that you can make it better. And so you're able to look for those mistakes that you didn't see, or maybe new innovations, but you have to be balanced out between the creative side, the passion, the thrill, and the very logical side. And that yin yang, that balance is crucial. Okay, I'll tell you a little secret that scares the shit out of me. This leaf, I want to do something with this leaf, but I still don't know how to do it, because this leaf will have a lot of veins, and to do that may require a great deal of time and patience, because as we used with this part with a light touch, I want the veins to be very light. And I won't be doing that tonight, but I see it coming in the future. That will be the hardest part of this particular project. I'm going to try this one more time with the shade, because I want you to see a deep burn, some deep burn action with the shade. Because I want this dark, decisive. Let's see how it works. I'm not even dissipating. I'm wanting it to be as dark as I can put it. And this point helps. I'm applying pressure to the very tip and the sides, both sides. There. The side. The other side. Now it's almost flat as I'm dragging it along the line of the edge of the rose. That's already fading. I'm going to go as long as I can. The heat is almost gone. Yep, that's all I got. But wait a minute. Something here. I had an inspiration. No. When the poker is almost cold, you can add grays, very light grays to the work. You can barely see it. It was too cold. But I don't know if it'll show up. Where is it? Right here. Where's my finger? Can you see a little gradation? Okay, here we go. Right, that spot right there, where it's a little bit different coloration, little grays. It gives you a little bit of light shade. Probably needs to be a little bit darker than that, but it gives you an idea. Okay, so with this, you saw me working with the bellows. You saw me working with the pokers. I generally work with 3 pokers of the same kind. I don't usually go back and forth between line and shading. I would usually just do the line first until I get the full line image. And then I would focus on shading as a second step. I did this today for you guys, so you can see it. And actually, you can see a really cool gradation here between where it's really dark and then it fades. So I'm going to probably keep that in there somehow. I like that. So I'm going to switch to my table inside. So if be mindful, I'm moving. Hello. Actually, before I do, I want to share a few things with you on my table of display. We talked about painting. Well, there are 2 books that I use as my period sources. Cenino di Andrea Cenini and The Undiverse Arts by Theophilus. These 2 books are hundreds of years old, even though they don't look it. Those of you that are probably crafters, you're already aware of these sources. They provided me the knowledge that I needed for my Artside project, which is here. So remember that chest I told you about? My inspirational image? This is it.
Beautiful.
What I decided to do with this chest was to wrap the image around the chest. And so I'm going to walk you around the chest so you can see what I'm talking about. So this was the knight at the center of the five in his tent outside the Jerusalem. This is a knight to his left. And to his right. But my favorite part, I hope I can do this, is the back part. I decided to put the knights that are on the far right, far left, I put them back to back. And on the top, I put the Triskells of Trimaris as a little added bonus. And these two tents in the front and the back, I've connected them on top, and I'm going to have a rose handle. It's a porcelain rose handle that's not currently installed. And on the inside, which is not part of the art side project, but my art side project is just the outside, but I had to do something on the inside. So I got royal blue velvet, which I, for the bottom part, I got wooden slats that I stapled the velvet to the slats. So all these are 5 wooden slats, the bottom and the sides. And the very top, I glued on with period hide glue. And so that's the inside. So, point of reference. So remember we were talking about paint and how to paint your work. The first step is to decide what to paint, of course. The next step is to apply what's called a gesso. A gesso is like a cement that you can order online. You don't want to generally apply paint directly to the wood, which I did do on the rim of on this edge, but you can already see how the paint flecks off. It's not really made to go straight onto the wood. And I'll probably have to touch this up. But I did this as an inspiration at the last minute, and I didn't want to do gesso because gesso will probably be knocked off as I open and close the chest. But gesso is a kind of cement that you apply several coats to the sections. I can show you. Let me put you guys down for a second.
I had a question on your chest. Is this
Yes.
that you picked up at like a craft store, or did you have this chest made?
I tried to have a chest made, but it didn't work out. My goal was to try to recreate, the actual historical chest, but no, I actually, on my way back from Key West, there was a store that sold novelty stuff, and they had this chest, and it has a few blemishes on it. It's not perfect, but it was the right size, and it was clean enough.
Perfect.
Okay, what was I about to do? Oh yeah. I want to show you what gesso looks like when it's applied. So this is the cement, and when you apply it, it is messy, and you have to do several coats. It's actually gelatinous, and so as you're working with the gesso, it will harden, and so you want it to be like a milky white as you apply it. But once it hardens, you have to, again, time is a tool. You have to allow it a day or two to dry, and then apply another coat, and then apply another coat. And then afterwards, I went back. I'm telling you something that I'm not even mentioning in my art site project. I skipped over this particular comment. Is cleaning it. I use like an X-Acto blade to chip away and clean up all this messiness on the sides, and just water, soap and water. But in some cases, I needed to be very fine-tuned cleaning to make it a sharper line. And so I use an X-Acto blade for that. And you can see, I'm trying to get it's tricky. So it comes off of the wood and it puts a layer onto the wood that then you would paint on. Now the paint is tempera paint. Tempera paint is egg yolk. I purchased a set of pigment, an assortment of pigment, which I think is in my art kit. I'm sorry I didn't have that on hand. One thing I left out. So I ordered a set of, I think it's like 12 small containers of various colors of pigment. And then you take egg yolk, you can do it with whites. It's a different art form. I didn't use the egg white. I just used the egg yolk. And so you clean off the yolk, get off all the extras that you don't want. And then I usually one egg yolk was enough. Then you whip it so that's liquefied. And then I had three spoons, three very small spoons, one for the egg yolk, one for the pigment to combine them, and then one spoon just to mix them up and stir them. I do that so that you're not contaminating the other sources. And what I found fascinating was the more egg yolk I used, the lighter the color. And so I realize this isn't exactly pyrography, but it's related. And so the more pigment you use, the darker the color. And so you can see a gradation of colors actually. And I've got to turn the chest around to show that to you. Give me a second. Okay. So I hope you can see this. Tent is green, but they're different shades of green. And there's a very light shade of green, which I liked that it showed, it's almost like a different shading values. It was an accident that I liked and I kept it. And so you can see that obviously this line of the tent had far more yolk, far less pigment, whereas the darker lines had more pigment, less yolk. So, all right. So the last step was to create a varnish, a period varnish, which is, I think, comes from the Sanini book, which is a combination of pine resin, which I ordered. This pine resin comes in chunks. And I used a nice flat rock to crush it down and grind it down so it's powdery. And then you combine that with linseed oil. Both I ordered online. Do this outside. The next step is you need to boil them together. I used 1 part pine resin, 2 parts linseed oil. I used 1 cup of resin and 2 cups of linseed oil. But you want to do this outside and be very careful of flame. If you can avoid flame at all costs, it is very flammable and very dangerous. As it was explained in the historical text, you want to be very careful about flame. It's very hard to put out. with the linseed oil and the pine resin combined. And that gives you a varnish. The pine resin gives you some protection to the varnish, but it makes it pop. And that's actually going to be what I'm going to be doing on Wednesday, is I'm going to put another layer of this onto the chest to make it pop.
There was a question about paint. Is there any concern of the paint chipping off, or does it soak into the wood? And does the varnish actually help protect the paint?
Yeah, the actually you can see that the paint is chipped off in a few places here. And I've had to do another, I have to touch it up every once in a while. So yes, it does chip. I'm not really satisfied with the level of protection this varnish is giving me. Ideally, it should give you some protection. And I may not have been able to create the right chemical combination to do that. My intention is, once I finish the art site project, I'm going to hit it with the polyurethane. I just didn't want to use any modern stuff with my art site project. Oh, let me show you the rose that's going on top. This is a beautiful, beautiful rose to cap it off. I just have to show you. Isn't that cool? So that's going to be the handle.
Beautiful.
Now, it's also a solution to a problem, and I'll show you why. As I said, this chest is not perfect. And we have a problem here that it does not line up the way it should. Okay, you can actually see the blue velvet inside, because this is lower. And the rose's real purpose is, once I screw it in, it's going to even this out for me. I have a copper washer on the top and a metal washer on the bottom. I'm a brass washer, not copper, for and so this part here is going to be covered. And so the idea is that on a practical side, it will fix this problem so it's even and flush. And on the artistic side, it will be the cap to both of these tents. It will connect the tents together as the cap of the tents. So that was the plan and inspiration for that. Before we finish, I want to show you a little bit about the mundane tools. Wow, we've gone over. So are you detecting a theme? Another rose? The beauty of mundane tools is speed. You don't have to worry about a bellows. You don't have to worry about coal. And you don't have to worry about that damn 7 seconds. But you do also need ventilation. And so I'm going to turn you this way so you can see I have a fan, which I'm turning on right now. Because otherwise the smoke is going to come right into your face. So you want a fan handy if you're working indoors. It's not that bad working indoors. It's nothing like working with a period tools with big fire and smoke. Let me move you a little bit closer. You're right over my shoulder. Okay, so this is my favorite wood burning tool, because I have this neat little knob that I can change the heat level. Now I have two, because I want to be able to show you with the straight edge and the shading flat diamond shape. So if you have two on hand, then you can switch back and forth as you like to. I would use a small pair of pliers like this if in the middle of the work you want to change out the tips. I would suggest you have a plate on hand so that you can put the tips someplace safely to cool. Let's see. I think that's all I need to tell you about in preparation. The techniques are pretty much the same. You can do much finer work with a tip like this because it's smaller. And let's see. Again, you have to decide before you start what you want to work on. Again, pressure is key. The amount of pressure you use is key. So especially if you want to go from dark to light. And so that's what I'm going to do with this line here. Less pressure, less pressure, less pressure, less pressure. Okay. So this is a line here. It went very dark. And as I pulled back on the pressure, you could see the fade in the line. This particular, again, this has been sitting here for about an hour or some minutes. So it was very hot when I first applied it. So you have to think about what you want dark. Think about what you want light. Okay, it's gonna do this line here. Got a curvy part, so I have to be careful. Just a little bit of pressure now. And curve. Waviness. There we go. I did that line outside and that line. Just you can see how much faster it is. Got a little piece here. It's a little bit, not a lot of pressure. So I can turn down. Oh, this is this doesn't have the knob. This is an on and off switch, which is not what I prefer. This one would allow me more options, but it is what it is. So let's do this line over here. This leaf. This one is going to have a nice fade. Pressure, pressure, and now I'm going to start lightening the pressure. There you go. You can see that fade of the line. And that's happening because I'm lessening the pressure as I go. Very heavy to light. This one I want to be done. You can move it around. It's another advantage. Much easier to move your work around to get the angle that you want. You know, because you do straight lines from easier from up to down or in angles. So you might want to move your work around to be in the best position. So it's up and down for you. Say, so this is one straight line going here. I'm going to go from up to down. It's much easier for me to do a straight. Now the nib is flat against the surface for this kind of line. Right? It's much easier to do a line, but it's not a perfect straight line. I don't want a perfect straight line. I just follow the line, the curve, make it feel more organic. Okay, so that's a straight edge. Again, you're using the tip for curves. If you're doing a straight line, you're using the flat edge of the nib. And it's much easier, much faster to do this technique. Put this down carefully.
Guillermo,
Yes.
I just want to pipe in. I've been, as I watch you, this is great. Thank you very much. I have been looking at bellows on Amazon, and I'm just guessing that we're going to be sticklers for real wood and real leather. At least I would be.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the headers for the bellows are full of shit, and You just have to read into it a little bit to find out it's OSB or plywood and fake leather. So just be
Mhm.
careful if you're interested in getting leather and wood.
I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed making my first bellows. And it was something I was frustrated. I hadn't thought about ordering a bellows online. It never occurred to me. You know, for me to do the pyrography, I realized I needed a bellows. And I said, okay, so I guess I'll have to. It was a rabbit hole I went down, but I thoroughly enjoyed the process. Even though it was, you know, the materials I used were very creative, non-period tools, but just just learning how a bellows is created and figuring it all out was a lot of fun.
Do you-
And go ahead.
Well, no, I apologize. I just wondered, did you figure out the mistake that you made, that why it didn't work so well?
The bellows?
Yeah, the bellows that you created, that you made.
No, it wasn't no, it wasn't a mistake. It was wear and tear.
Oh.
I used that bellows successfully for about 2.5 years or so. I easily could have just redone it. You know, it's the leather, the wear, you know, the leather took its toll. You know, the heat takes its toll, time takes, law of entropy, everything will break down in time. And once I realized it wasn't working as well, I went online and I found one. And you know, and it was a sad day because I really was proud of my bellows, but I had to lay it to rest. Now it's a teaching tool. You know, but it was a passion that I thoroughly enjoyed, and we're still very proud of it. But you remember how ugly that bellows looked, how dirty it was. That's the point I need to keep making. This is a dirty, dirty hobby. So, all right, before I break up, I need to show you shading on this and how it works. Very similar. You got the diamond shaped nib. I'm not touching my hand. This is hot. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, that's even better. So you can use that tip to your advantage to get into tight corners. And let's see here. Looks like I've started to do the shading along this side, so I guess I'll continue to go from left to right. I'm putting the pressure on the right side of the nib as I'm following this line. Tip, use that little tip, maximum effect. On. Switch it around. Shading as close to that edge as possible. Dark as possible. I'm just using the side of the nib now, just the very edge of the nib to get into the corner and make that line as crisp as possible. Okay, so now I'm not happy with that, but what I have here is a good dark line around this. Now I want to show a better fade. This is something your class is going to get, but other people haven't seen. So I'm going to do the same technique. You know what? This sometimes works if I do it around my wrist a little bit for better control. I'm going to do the same technique, applying pressure on the left side of the nib, but not so much pressure because I wanted to just do a fade. I want to do that fading shadow now. Almost grays. Show a gradation. I like that word, gradation. Going from dark to light. That's the power of shading. It actually makes it come to life, I think. A little more. Now I'm doing the flat edge, but I'm barely touching it. Barely touching the wood. And it's doing a nice soft hue.
Estaba afuera. ¿Afuera dónde? Con Steven.
Okay. And that's nice soft shade. We go from an absolute black dark to gradual color. That's flat and a very light touch. Very light touch. Even it out. Little tip. Okay. Oops, there we go. That's a good start. I might add a little bit more later. I might leave it as is, but you can see how the shading goes from dark to light. You know, and the only way to really do it, it's something that's very hard to teach. You really just got to put your pen down and do it to learn the technique of when to do flat, when to do side, when to do edge, when to do tip. There are a lot of choices with this particular tool, which is why it's effective. So I'm gonna turn this off. Now, because I have the fan, I didn't have any smoke in my face. My last apartment, I used to have a fan above me, but now I'm not so lucky. So that's a tour of history, a tour of technique, a little bit of discussion about tempera paint and how to use gesso to put a primer down on the wood so that the tempera will stick. Talked a little bit about varnish, and to make the varnish does do a protective coat, but it gives a quality to the wood that really makes it come to life. So it's a wonderful final touch. We talked about how to do the pyrography, the period tools. You can see the big difference between the modern tools and the period tools. Why would I use modern tools? Well, if I'm doing something as a token or as a gift, and it doesn't really matter if it's not an art side project, then maybe I want more finer tune kind of detailing that I can do with a smaller pen than I can do with the big pens, not pens, the iron pokers. You know, it depends on what your project is. You know, this project is specifically for you. It's my teaching ropes. But you know, it depends on what your goals are and whether or not it's like she mentioned, wood, leather, the types of material you're using. Maybe it'll matter to you. You want to do period technique. But as you can see, it takes a lot more work.
Several people asked about what types of wood do you like to wood burn on?
Ideally, cypress is a good wood because it's soft and it takes to wood burning very good. The chests, the original chests that were used in Italy were cypress. And so but I'm not so particular about the kind of wood, the quality of the wood, and that it's a clear surface. That's more important to me. I've worked on bamboo with the spoons. This is just you know wood that was in Home Depot that was just like an extra cutoff. You know, it depends on the table and the rows that I showed you outside. That wood I picked up at Home Depot, and those round boards for tables. And and it works very nicely for photography. But you'll be sitting in Home Depot for probably about 5 to 10 minutes, going through the boards and selecting the right one, the one that is clear of any blemish or scratches or whatnot. And of course, you can look on both sides. So, but cypress is recommended in the literature as the best wood to work on.
There's so much, I design build those tiny houses, and people like to have a few little custom, details. And it's a really cool how much, I mean, it's not real nice to see that people are selling really high quality furniture, or moreover giving it away, because some of the younger people, typically I hear from furniture sellers that they don't value the nice solid woods anymore so much. So what you can do, I don't know if you'd agree, is look for free stuff, on Marketplace or Craigslist. Marketplace I like because you see the picture and they get to put ratings on, and you find out if the person's a schmuck or not. But if you could sand something down that might have a light finish on it, you could get some amazing woods for nothing.
And in Michael's, actually, they sell, they have a whole section of wood for pyrography, wooden chests, wooden castles, things that are already designed and created for you that you can just go to town on. If you have a woodworker in your area, you can partner up with them and they can make something for you to work on. And I've done that. We've done awards for our tournaments where the woodworker, he made a chest, and then I did images on the chest, adorned the chest that he made. And so that's a lot of fun. So thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wow. Good start.
A lot of fun. It's a fun hobby. It's very meditative, as I said, dirty, but and smoky. I filled up my apartment. It's nice, clean, nice and clear now, though. Luckily, the people I have, they don't mind this. The smell of burnt wood. It's a nice smell. It's not a bad smell.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I gotta say, it was really nice to see the difference between the way you do your work and what I would do, because I used 95% of you said, hey, I'm too.
Hey, it's all art.
It looks really great. I was surprised because I was like, how is he gonna do this? And I was like, wow, that's really awesome. It looks wonderful.
There's 100 ways to the same destination. It's all good.
I
It's
do
all
have a
good.
question.
Mhm.
It was a question I came to the class, I had before I came to the class. Are deep lines engraved, first engraving the wood? Is that part of this?
I have done that. And so what I would do is, thank you for asking that question. So I had meant to mention that. So let reflect on the chest with the tents. Those tents, the line had to be very straight to pull off that tent line. And so I applied a cold poker to basically engrave the line in advance. And then in that case, I thought it was advantageous because the straight edge was so important. And so I did a cold, because cypress, again, that the chest is cypress, it's soft. And so I engraved that one line, and then I went back over it again with the hot poker. And it was much easier to have that straight line, crisp straight line that I needed for the tents. So yes, thank you for that question.
Thank you for the answer. Cool. Stone March, goodbye, everybody. And Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for joining us.
Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful New Year. God bless.
God bless.
Until we
Happy
meet
New Year.
again.
Thank you for the class.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
class. Great.
Thank you. Namaste. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Been very, very pleasurable. It was a great class. I appreciate you take time to teach for us.
Oh, it's an honor to be asked by another kingdom to teach the class. It's a blessing. I appreciate being here. I thank you so much.
Do you have any final words before I turn it off?
I just encourage everybody to find their inspiration, find that thing that makes them go, wow, and allow that inspiration to fill your life and enrich your life. Whatever it is, if it's pyrography, if it's bardic, if it's fighting, whatever your interest is, that is what makes life worth living. And we can't just work and come home. And if we have some art form that we enjoy and something that can enrich the lives of others through our work, it's a service that is a really beautiful thing. And so I wish that for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.